also says this, but we also did just order a big.
That's a bit of a mistake
That's
right
what I
there.
said.
Because I'm sure quarter-inch was not called for.
And then this one, so we can put that on just in case.
You know, but
Okay.
I think code
And then
was
everybody else needs to turn theirs on, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm get,
somewhere in the vicinity. But I don't have anything to report for their progress right now because they're literally just working. So there's no work product to show from what they've done so far. We've all seen the scope of services. I shared that with the public forum meeting last week, and we also put that up. We will start posting everything that takes place in these meetings, usually within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting. So,
Could I?
yes,
add
sir,
one
please.
thing? So they did pick up the plans, so they have those. I also gave them a study from the town's impact fees, which was about a 20-page report. It had a lot of statistics and numbers that
We're relevant, yep,
related to it.
okay.
Also, I made sure they had a copy of the original needs assessment
Yep.
for the PD itself.
Nice.
And pretty much, I went back to when we started this, and all that information that I didn't have at the time, but it followed what the projection of employees and size of space, almost to a T.
Mhm.
But they have all that now.
Right, yeah.
All the
so we
blocks.
guessed right those years ago about some growth.
Yeah, in 2018, I just kind of did it to see what I needed to look at to go to. And all the numbers, like I say, they just kind of all
That's
fall
why you
into
make
place.
all the money, Kip. That's
No,
I'm kidding.
I mean, it's amazing. that-
No, isn't it nice that it worked
Yeah.
to how it was supposed to,
So, yeah,
which is encouraging, you know, I mean,
it
that's,
just means that we're on the right
we're-
track, I guess is where I was.
sure, for what our needs are.
Yes,
And it's not frivolous, it's really what our needs are.
it's actually what was projected to happen.
Right, which is great. That means, you know, things are. I don't know if I shared, so I was just talking to Jared about this. So, Northampton, the town of Northampton just built a public safety building with fire and police in it. And they also built a town hall separately at the same time. So for all three of those entities, well, the building itself for the public safety was about $8 million. So that's pretty encouraging, considering they put a fire department in their building. We're only looking to put town offices in. And their standalone town hall was $3 million. So that kind of gives you a ballpark on where we're looking at in terms of what that is. And again, a standalone, as Kip can attest to, that's, you know, a lot of that work is for the first floor you're paying for and everything that goes on top of that.
Where's their new town hall?
It is right next to the new public safety building.
So did,
Two separate buildings.
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Did they do one warrant article for him?
They did a warrant article for everything.
Wow.
They did not, they try, this is, what they did wrong was exactly what I'm trying to avoid by having the public meetings now and everything. Their townspeople continuously, and they tried to get this in several years ago. Their townspeople didn't know what was going on. They didn't, they weren't informed enough by the time the vote came. They had no idea. They just saw a price tag and said, that's a lot. That's all that, literally. There wasn't a ton of education, admittedly by the then chief of police. Yeah, we should have done things differently. So I kind of tucked that in the back of my head. That, you know, even as a taxpayer myself, if I'm going to vote, I want to be educated, right? And there were people that didn't even know it was going to be on the ballot, apparently. That was some of the feedback that they got on it. So that just is in line with how we're thinking. So as we talked about last time, I had a public forum meeting on the 10th, which was last week, really to try to generate some conversation among residents. We had a better turnout than the first time. First time, I think everybody there except for 4 people was committee members. So, and then I had that, I think I had that last September. But we had some good time. I mean, there was about 10 people in the room, but it was good to see 10 people show up to actually talk about And I didn't have a real form to the meeting. I wanted to get input from the public first. I gave a small update as to where we were and kind of where we started back in 2018. And we made a list, or minutes rather, of what some of the conversation topics were. Some of the ones that came up that were constructive in terms of other folks are looking at this similarly to we are, was the site. There were actually suggestions from the folks in the audience about where they think the building should be. Now, we've already looked at Scrabble, once. I know that was part of the Norwich study. There were some other interesting ideas about having the PD take over this entire building and moving the town hall. And I don't know that we ever got a consensus on where that town hall would go. But I thought that was an interesting one because I hadn't personally even thought about it. I hadn't even thought about it. However, we would run into the same problems that we would run into should the town hall stay. We have no elevator in the building. We would need to probably take away office space in order to put in an elevator shaft and all the works. We don't have a direct flight of stairs downstairs either. You gotta go through the basement. Then you gotta mitigate the water. That's the tricky issue that I couldn't even put a price tag on. Because the way I see it, the basement's below the water table. Kind of tough to, I don't know. I'm not an engineer or agricultural person or anything like that. I just know that it would probably be a mess. And realistically, what's the point of the use of the, and I'm just saying my opinion, please chime in if you have other thoughts. What's the use of the building if you've got to do all that to make it even workable and to be in the same building? Right? It doesn't ring like we're serious about the project. It rings like more like the Band-Aid that we did back in '01, Kip, was it? When we did the addition?
Downstairs,
Whatever,
The
yeah,
addition was
downstairs, yeah.
yeah, 19.
Or, I'm sorry, that was in 19, and then there was an addition done in 2001.
Yeah, this.
Right. And there was a comment made by one of the members at the meeting that we were told when the last edition went on this, we would be all set. And I kind of had to remind that was 23 years ago. 23 years is a lot to get out of an addition to a building that's already built in 1979, right? You can only hold things together with so much scotch tape and Band-Aids and duct tape. We know we can't go up with this building because the footing won't, right? Unless,
Well, that would be up for a structural engineer, but
right.
the guess is that it wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah. Plus, I don't know the exact construction, if you hold the trusses, where you'd be at spans.
And that's the thing too, is that, I mean, if you're gonna do that, you might as well just tear the whole building down and start over on the piece of property that we already own anyway.
Because
But
you'll still have no parking.
So would you say that these are common questions that you keep getting that you keep answering? Does it make sense to have like a frequently asked questions section on the municipal building
That's a great idea.
portion where it's like,
That's a
have you
really
considered
good idea.
Yeah, that's a
blah,
good
blah,
idea.
blah location? It's like, yes, actually, these are the locations we've considered and these are why they have been
That's a terrific
eliminated
idea.
or not eliminated.
No, I like that a lot. Thank you.
I also wonder about the benefits of having PD and town offices together.
Mhm.
Like in terms of, I know there's like bail issues, there's other issues where upstairs and downstairs work together.
Very
And that-
convenient. Then that's-
Right, so that might be something to put on it, like,
Yeah.
what are the benefits and drawbacks of having them in one site versus separated? Because I definitely, just being in here a lot, I see some definite benefits of it being
Well, I do
co-located.
too, and
It's not required, but.
no, but
it's a
years ago I would have said, no, I don't agree with that. But until I actually experienced it, because where I came from, the town hall was about a mile away. I never went there. You know, I go there to meet with the town administrator once a week, just to catch up. But it wasn't convenient, right? I have answers at my, and again, you can use the phone all the time. But, you know, I'm an in-person person too. It's very convenient to come up here and do one-stop shopping. All the answers that I need for a lot of the stuff I need, like selectmen function stuff, all of that stuff are on your plate. Building stuff and KIP's code stuff, you know, anything to do with bail or even tax stuff with Daphne, you know, I feel like we are looped in far better than any other PD. I really do. You know, we know what's going on with the Three Smithfield because we're here all the time.
Right.
That's good to know for us. And it's also good for the town hall because we share information that doesn't normally necessarily get shared at other
Right.
places. So that's a good point
That
too.
would be something to put on a frequently
Yeah.
asked question.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that I feel like is a frequently asked question, and I could not tell you which meeting I was at, but it's come up a couple times where people are saying, you know, there's a lot of projects that the town is talking about. There's capital improvement plan, there's a lot of projects. Like, what is there any sort of overarching, we're looking at all of these things together so that we're not building something in a place that, just kidding, later we wanted to do something else there, we weren't coordinating.
Right. And I think some of that actually goes along with that. A lot of people have questions on because that was mentioned in the meeting. We got the SRAT, we got conservation bond, all this stuff going on. And, you know, and I made it clear that the tree clearing is not part of this project per se. But it would be one less thing we have to do if we were able to. So that does seem to be a very popular concern I get from folks, is that, well, we got all these other things. Is somebody overseeing and watching all of this so we're not faced with these bonds every year? And I think that is a function of the CIP. It is. And I do need to update the CIP. I said it to me. I threw out just to put a double-digit figure. I could be off. Maybe it's only 8 million. Maybe it's 12. I don't know. But I had to put something higher than the 4-ish million that was the thought process for if we built in 2023. They had no inflation rate. So,
But I think it'd be good to respond to that the select board and BudCom and all of our department heads work very closely and collaboratively on all of these projects to make sure that they make sense together and that they're not conflictual, you know, that
I
this
think-
is,
But how
this
do
is
we-
We know
purposeful.
that, but
yeah,
I'm
how do
not
we
sure.
translate?
getting
to-
it out there.
How do we translate that to the folks that are voting and paying tax? I don't know the answer. I'm throwing it out there because it has come up a few times, and I don't have a perfect canned answer for that to say, well, you know, I do say CIP. I said that the other night. But if there's more to that answer, we should think about that and make sure we're putting that down in paper under, you know, and I love the frequently asked questions. That's a
Well, at
perfect.
the end of the day, it's the select board and the BudCom that are sort of taking the 50,000-foot view of
Right.
all projects and what goes on the warrant and et cetera. So
Right.
there is a home for those types
Sure,
of
sure.
discussions, and
Yeah.
they do happen at those boards.
No, and you know, again, I've been part of many of those discussions, so from my subjective view, we are watching all that, but
Right.
that doesn't translate out.
Yeah, I think you just have to keep saying it and keep explaining it and put it on
Well,
FAQs
I
and
think
get it
having a
out
place where
there.
we can actually
Yeah.
point people, it's like, here's a list of all the meetings,
Yeah.
here's a list of all the places we talked about, here's a list of all the minutes.
Yep.
More questions. Here's
Yeah.
the team.
Yep.
Right.
I like it. Let me see some other things that we talked about. I think it was sort of unanimous in some of the comments that I got that cost is the biggest prohibitive part of this whole project. Part of that because of the price, the size of the price tag. Part of that because of other projects that are going on. You know, but like I said, if I wait around for everybody to organize and then for everybody to understand organization, I'll be at the end of the line probably, right? I can't wait on this. It's not something that we want to prolong. I mean, this building committee thing has been going on since 2018. Obviously, COVID put a big hold on it. And then switching the administrations a couple of times within a short period of time didn't help that either. But you know, we're moving forward now. We've got great progress. We have great team members. We just have to things that. I asked the question. I think you know, we're talking about why this building is inadequate, and I said, does this room serve its purpose? And the answer from folks was they think it does. I think somebody said that the occupancy in this room is 97%. 97 people. I don't want to be in here when there's 97 people.
Let's just have town meeting in here then.
People have to sit on the floor.
Yeah, so I mean, great by, occupancy standards, but, I mean, we've all been in here when Russ opened all the windows because it's always stuffy. But more importantly is you got, and it happens enough so that I've noticed it, that you sometimes have people standing in the hallway, trying to hear in what's going on with the meeting, on any hot topic, and we're certainly not at a shortage of hot topics at our select board meeting, right? So my personal is this isn't effective. We're doing our best. We got giant TVs in the corners. We got, cords and everything, and we got all the stuff we need, but, we could certainly use a better, more state-of-the-art room to have our meetings in, so that there's more ability to have presentations. There's a better setup, to be more conducive to encourage conversation, encourage appropriate sound for those that are speaking, that doesn't always get picked up on. How many times have we heard stuff isn't getting picked up on the audio? We can't have that. We should be better than that, but we're not right now. It's nobody's fault, it's just where we're at.
I think, Chief, when Lois was here a couple meetings ago, it was also really, really helpful to hear like the history of this building and how it was mostly volunteer built and volunteer land, and that, just like with the amphitheater at the library, that a group of very well-meaning citizens did something amazing for the town, but it didn't last forever.
Right.
And needed to be redone and updated and modernized. And I think I didn't really myself even know that full history of this building.
Yeah.
So I think putting something like that on the FAQs,
Yeah,
what's
that's
the
good.
history of the building? How did we get the land? How did we pick this site? We didn't pick this site. It was gifted. So
Yeah.
I think some of that is helpful information to people
Okay.
to understand
Nope,
how
that's
we
good.
got here, because I'm not sure the average resident.
No, I like that. And I did discuss some of that in the forum. I wasn't exactly 100% positive on some of the dates, but, but like that 2001 thing, that's still so fresh in people's mind that they talk about it like it happened 5 years ago, and we should be living in a lap
Right.
luxury.
Multiple decades ago.
We have long-term memories when there's a high cost, but short-term memories when, things are a little bit different.
I think it's also important to push back against the idea that there's so many things going on in town. The open space bond, we've only spent $250,000 of that $3 million bond.
Mhm.
So yes, theoretically, there's a $3 million cost there, but it hasn't been utilized yet. We're hoping, knock wood, that we're gonna use more and more of it. I know the solar thing at the school comes up. That's relatively minimal cost on a yearly basis because of the cost savings for electricity. So I think we need to talk back to some of that, because cost is the number one concern.
Right.
That if we can talk back a little bit to that, and the charrette was and always has been an idea, and then the rec is having ongoing conversations about what parts of that idea to prioritize and try to bring to the people. Like there's no sneak attack, and John is here to talk about that. Those are
Also based
ongoing
on-
discussions.
Also, all of every one of those discussions is based in revenue generation opportunities.
Sure, right.
within expanding.
That's unique to the
So
rec.
it's like-
Yep.
What Jen is saying, just stepping into this, every single step of the way, we are, as taxpayers ourselves, we are very attuned to minimizing.
Right. And these meetings are being held in public, in a public forum, and nothing is going to be built without the taxpayers' consent and authorization. So I think there is some nervousness that some big bill is going to be just put onto the taxpayers. That's not how this works. Everything requires authorization of the town.
I think that's why if we can get a chart on the website where people because people don't always know about these
Yeah.
meetings, even if they know about this select board, whatever committees there are, having it all in one place, you can really say, oh, look, this list goes back to 2019, and here's this meeting where they first started talking about this, and this, and this, and this. And that just enables people to be more informed.
Definitely.
Yeah, we definitely are fortunate that we have a good amount of residents that actually do try to inform themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's actually kind of surprising sometimes. Oh, well, you actually read that. Oh, that's great. Because, sometimes you see that, complaints come in and you address it, and then, well, I didn't know that. It's been on the website, it's been here. So you're right, we do have to just keep continuing to toe
Yeah,
that
the more
line.
you say it, the better.
Right. And that is important, you know, and that goes along with bringing the history into where we've come from and what our vision is and so forth. You know, I think one of the things I hear the most is in relation to the SRET. And at least from some of those folks' perspective, they don't know what's going on with that. They know there's a big price tag. And I'm like, well, how would you spend any money? But that's how I'm viewing it because I have to.
Exactly. It's like a fear of the unknown, but it's not unknown. There's lots of details, there's lots of discussions. It's all public. It all requires the public's vote. There's nothing under the table going on. There's nothing that we
No, we
can do
can't.
without the town's permission and cooperation and interest. So
But
this
certain
is
things you
all
cannot-
transparent.
Yeah, certain things you cannot operate outside the parameters. One is
Right.
spending money with.
Correct. Correct.
Spend it without telling people.
That's not how it works around here. Yeah. You guys all know that's not how it works
Yeah.
around here.
But no, and again, these are going through the concerns that came up, and that's, you know, I wanted to have a meeting so I could hear those things firsthand from a group and not,
Sure.
hey, you know, I heard this, or I heard that, or I heard this. I don't want to hear that. I want somebody to come to me and talk to me and say, this is why I'm either for or against this whole project, or this is my alternative idea. That's really why I want these. And it's developing some very good discussion at our meetings here, that it's more useful than just saying, okay, where are we at? And let's meet next month. So I've already gotten a lot of value just out of that one. There was mention regarding the growth for the town. It was brought up that there's not been any population growth, and that's fine. But
Yeah, there's a big misunderstanding about that.
there is, and growth doesn't just translate into actual people. Growth translates into transactional stuff, traffic, all the things that go along with all the services that we have to offer for the town as town employees and department heads. So, and of course, you know, and I talk about PD growth, and rightfully so, some have said, well, you have more officers, you expect more. Well, yes, that's why I have more, so we can deter and detect more crime than we were before. We were missing a ton before. You know, and it doesn't necessarily mean violent crime either. I mean, the opportunity costs that we've lost over the years by not being sufficiently staffed is immeasurable. But we now know what the measurement looks like when we have a decent set of staff. So growth isn't just measured by bodies, in my opinion. Everybody else, you know, is there any other growth areas that we can talk about, especially with town hall services or town government services? I mean, I've seen a growth just since I've been here for 2 years.
I think that is a big misunderstanding that there's been growth in buildings and lodging and homes, but there's been a change in the layout of those homes, and there's more older people living in Brentwood. There's more single people living alone in a housing unit. And so when you look at the number of human bodies in Brentwood, it's only grown a little, but when you look at housing, it's grown a lot. And so that is more business, more tax bills, more EMS calls. And I think sometimes people misunderstand that, and they just look at the number of bodies and think, oh, it's exactly the same as it always was, even though our revenue base has gone up significantly because we have more and more and more units. And I think people get confused about that.
Data.
Maybe
the
just that raw
population
data, like BudCom shared at town meeting last year, where they showed the increase in the property values in Brentwood, and that had gone up significantly over the past 5 years, an increased number of housing units. Maybe something like that would help people understand that the town has grown, just in a slightly different way than they're thinking about it. But in a way that all those houses need KIPS services when they're being built, and then they need police services, and they need Daphne services. And so the amount of work has expanded as the town has changed. You know, it's grown/changed in the way people are living. Correct.
But there was discussion that, you know, young people can't afford to live in.
Correct. That's a whole nother separate discussion for a different
But
day.
I
that's
don't think
part
that's
of-
specific to Brentwood, though.
No, it's not.
No, it's not, but that's what was brought up, is that young people can't afford to live here.
Correct,
Well, young people can't afford to live in a lot of places right now.
correct.
Because the housing market just skyrocketed. I mean, my own son, who's 30, is looking for a place, and, you know, there's nothing really out
Yeah,
there
that's
for
not
under
unique to
$500,000.
Brentwood. And people who are really
That's-
concerned about that need to go to Concord and talk to our legislators
Or
in
even
Concord.
just the planning board and about how we're gonna-
Correct. Yeah, that's a separate.
Yeah, but I mean, you should know that that's part of what's out there, is there's a concern that, you know, with all the goings on, that the tax base is gonna increase so much that you're gonna miss all those young people that wanna move to Brentwood. That's the line that's being towed by.
I don't know that people can't afford to move here because of the taxes, though.
Right. They can't
Well,
buy a
Well,
home.
cost
Well,
of
that's-
living,
that's-
cost of living
but, like,
altogether.
It's what your house is worth, right? So like, I guess I could sell my house for a third of what it's valued at if I wanted to be the only person who moved in.
Right.
That wouldn't change how much they pay tax.
But even the people that would want to move, you could sell your house that you bought for $500,000, maybe for $1 million today. But to get what you have now, you have to spend $1 million to get in another one. So it's really, I mean, it's not about.
I also think in Brentwood, sometimes I feel like there is a lack of acknowledgement that Brentwood is a financially sound town and that a relatively wealthy town, I believe the 13th
Jack came up with the
wealthiest
budget committee
town
last
in
year.
New Hampshire.
Right.
And so that means there are some more expensive housing units. There are going to be some higher property taxes. And I think sometimes people don't acknowledge that in some of these discussions.
There was one individual brought up that, well, why, we're, building houses for $1.5 million, these beautiful mansions, blah, blah. Why can't we do a PD for that? The obvious difference is residential versus.
PD and a house are a little
Yeah,
different.
commercial but those are the thoughts that are in people's heads right now. As to be, reticent to change right now.
Sure.
It's grasping at anything that might make sense. And again, most of it all boils down to the financial aspect.
Yeah, I think we also need to keep reiterating the point that the BudCom tried to make at town meeting last year, which is that our taxes have not gone up in 5 years. And there's a real, if you had talked to some people that come to these meetings, you would not know that. But in fact, if you look at the chart of taxes, they went steadily up for like 15 years and then have been basically flat for 5 years, mostly because of some of the residential growth in town and increased tax base. And so I think we need to keep pushing back. If people are saying how much our taxes are going up every year, that is not factually accurate.
And that just shows
we
to
have
go
to keep
that the
saying.
powers that be for the last 5 years have been very good at managing the town.
Yeah, in the sense that
Your
we
taxes
have
aren't going
tried
up.
to be as fiscally responsible as possible, but we've had a little bit of wiggle room because the town has grown and our property tax base has grown.
Well, look at impact fees that we get.
And impact fees are
Oh,
up
gosh.
because of building, exactly.
we got a lot of
We're
impact.
doing a good balancing act between the growth and the
Yep.
costs. John, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to point out that a lot, if you said, sort of grasping at anything that we can to make a point.
I didn't mean it like desperation grasp.
Well,
Anything
I-
that will point in the direction that this is too much money.
but I want to highlight the fact that there was zero pushback, and I do mean zero pushback, when it came time to vote for the second multi-million-dollar conservation space.
Right, like none.
Zero. We haven't heard one peep from anyone about how that's too much money. We haven't heard one peep from anyone about how that's impacting taxes. And this is a relatively similar dollar figure that we're talking about. So I'm just saying, like,
No, I get it.
it is more along, from my perspective, a lot more along the lines of, it's not necessarily about the money, it's about something else sometimes.
Or
Sure
about
can.
change, people have trouble with
Or
change.
change, yeah.
Yeah.
But that very bond was used as somewhat of an argument against this the other night, saying, well, we have that $3 million bond.
Well,
Yeah, that doesn't make
So
sense.
I have to look at that.
but it doesn't, it's incongruous.
I get that, totally get that, but conveying that and convincing that that's not the case.
I don't think that you're gonna convince everybody.
No, but,
We'll do our best, right?
no.
That's all you can do.
But, I might not convince everybody, but at least my part of my goal is to walk away from this, win, lose, or draw, that people were educated about why we're doing what we're doing. Because if they're educated and they make an informed decision, I mean informed with an asterisk, I can, we can walk away saying we did our best to inform, to be completely open to the public
Yeah.
about what we're trying to do, and they just won't support it.
Yeah.
And I'll live with that. I won't stop trying, but, and we brought up history too. This was an interesting one too, because as anybody, I think, that's been in town for a little bit, at least even anecdotally, said, well, when that fire station was built, it was supposed to be a public safety. And I get this because some people want to build half this building now and leave the upstairs. It's great. But we already said once that we were gonna finish something.
But I think that's another place where just being able to answer, like, here, we pulled up the minutes from those meetings, and here's why that didn't happen, or like, here's what happened that changed that plan, right? So that it's not just like, oh, well, it happened, it just didn't.
A lot of people are saying, gosh, we put it on the ballot 4 years in a row. Well, then we messed up 3 years. Because we didn't educate enough and we didn't convince the people that this was the right idea, is my opinion. Now, that's just an opinion. I wasn't here. I can't speak to what was said. But somebody the other night said, well, it's because the fire and police were fighting it. And Kevin?
Yeah, Bruce Stevens said that.
Yeah. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. But, no, I never knew that. But why should the,
Weren't the discussions mostly just about cost in the end?
But it also doesn't matter because it's irrelevant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
But a lot
Oh,
of
it was
people
just
are hanging
before
their
you,
hat on it.
that's right.
A lot of people are hanging their hat on how difficult it was to get the fire station. Almost telling me, well, you shouldn't even try because the fire guys tried 4 times.
Well, it can be difficult to get things done. It doesn't mean you don't
Absolutely.
try and make the best case that you can.
Right. But again, this is what's being said
Yeah.
in the open, and we need to know about it.
Yeah.
Um,
I hear you. I also think, Chief, to make a comment about some of the anxiety about the charrette, I actually think that we can, to John's point, tweak that to our benefit. Because if we end up deciding that we are definitively going to try to build a municipal building on the rec campus, that municipal building is not particularly revenue generating.
Correct.
But if we have construction crews out there and we've coordinated with the rec about, can we put, a basketball court? Can we do something else at the same time with
Yeah.
the same construction crews so the overhead is reduced, that pairs this building with revenue generating buildings in a town complex, some people are going to look at that as, oh, that's just more money for a bigger project. And I think if we decide to go that route, and I know Rec has been talking about this, that it's going to be important to point out that it lowers your costs to build things at the same time. And if some of those buildings are revenue generating, it will help the overall project be less tax impactful over time. So I think people are nervous about sort of the sort of merger between this municipal building and the rec discussions, but like they're going to be merged inevitably if they're on the same site.
Right.
And if they're right across the parking lot from each other,
Right.
then we may decide to do several things at once in a way that actually is going to benefit us financially rather than just be a bigger price tag. So
Yep.
depending what the rec ends up deciding
Right.
to put forward over the next year or so, we need to really get all those conversations together so that the public understands why we're doing things and
I agree.
why we might actually save money
Mhm.
by doing things at the same time.
Yep, no, and that's, because some of the ideas I've heard about from the rec, and they're great, Jim.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Pickleball courts, basketball courts, stuff that
Mm.
our community
I
has
mean, that kind
wanted,
of stuff is,
right?
and there's a lot of other ways to generate it.
Yeah.
Just we're not tapped into all of them
Yep,
either.
increase rentals,
Yeah.
right? Those things,
But along
unless
with-
we rent out the town hall, meeting space, that
Right.
building won't necessarily be significantly revenue generating.
Right.
But if we pair it in a smart way, we can probably offset some of the cost of the whole project with revenue.
Right, and part of that, increasing those revenue generating activities and facilities and so forth, that comes with added personnel in all departments, really rec, town hall.
Sure,
police,
it might, yeah.
and that's what we want, right? We want to be able to provide the best services, but we can't do it on a shoestring.
Well, but not necessarily, like if we had a meeting space that was attractive enough that people people wanted to rent it
Mhm.
during the day, like to have a nice video conference call that they can't do from their house, that would be great,
Yeah, you don't need a lot of personnel for that.
Yeah.
right?
And
Like,
the,
that's
and,
the same building that we have, so that wouldn't take extra personnel,
no,
just the
yep,
extra income.
no, you're absolutely right. So, another thing I wanted to bring up, sorry, bear with me for a second. In that meeting, Karen spoke to some of the limitations that they're facing upstairs. She gave some very specific to her position, but in general, we need more staff. It's just a thing that's inevitable at some point. There's no place to put staff. If I wanted to, I really couldn't promote anybody else or have a detective because I don't have any more offices. We're full. And if I add those two, I don't know where I'm gonna put their lockers. Offices within the next couple of years. So I don't think that that's the issue in terms of, but those are the issues that we face.
You also said that there's no canine office.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's no canine office. Every building I've ever been in that has a canine program has a canine office. We can't offer that right now unless they took away our conference room down there, which is really not.
Where the canine can be in the building in a
Canine
safe
could be in the
way.
building,
Yeah.
in a safe way, in the crate, or
Yeah.
what have you.
Gotcha.
I know it happens and it must happen in some areas, but I'm not a fan of leaving a dog in a car today, even with the AC on.
Yeah.
Let's say technology fails Matty and his alarm doesn't go off on his watch and his phone, but the fan's on. Dog's dead in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? We should be able to bring in
Yeah.
that, but those are all natural growth things that we face by becoming a larger agency. Solar panels has always come up for discussion with these, and last week didn't disappoint. We own them, or we're close to it, or what are we?
We're in the process, right? Yep.
Is there, at the board level or any other level, a plan to move?
Why would we? I've
Oh, no,
heard that before and it mystifies me.
Right. Well, I mean, they're not attractive. Let's face that. But
I'd actually kind of argue, they
part
show
of-
Brentwood is cutting edge solar, saving money. I think it's a good advertisement for the town that Brentwood has a solar array for our town buildings. Like,
Yeah.
I actually think it's kind of cool.
the reason for bringing those up in terms of this discussion is to still put the PD onto the fire department. That's where that comes.
You can,
There's
I
not
don't
a lot of
remember,
room.
I'm pretty sure you can't build there because it's within some sort of setback or something.
So, in regards to adding building to the fire department directly,
Mhm.
well, you do have state setback restrictions, so you have parking issues, a lot of reconstruction. The overnight rooms in the fire department, second floor face out, so right where you're putting that building, so you're gonna have to redo the whole HVAC system, create ventilation.
Oh, I
think
believe me,
you're right on.
I know that there's a lot of limitations there, but again, this is what's being floated out there.
Sure.
Well, that's
So
part of
having
that.
a place where we can kind of have an answer to that.
So that's part of that we talked about last time, the history. And I wrote up a few things.
Yeah,
and
I
figured
remember.
that some people would read it and say, well, what do you mean? And I can broaden.
Mhm.
This is one of those points.
That would be a good thing to be, what's the feasibility of adding on to the fire station would be a good thing to be on an FAQ.
That was looked into.
Yep.
Give it some thought.
And part of that is to, and it stands that any reasonable person would maybe think along these lines. Well, if all that only costs us $4 million to reconstruct and put a new building on the fire department, and you want $10 million to move two departments, why wouldn't we pick the $4 million?
Because you're tying yourself to buildings
And I'm just throwing that
And
out
you're-
there.
And you're still,
Yeah, I mean, this building is, 1979. For all of the reasons that we've spoken about in the limitations, I'm not in favor of reusing. And there's too many things that scream, you know, we gotta get out of this building.
But I think presenting information, all the information that answers all the questions, so that people can come to that conclusion or not on their own, is gonna be the best way to go.
Yep.
So like, yes, that's how people may individually think, but as a committee, being like, here's everything.
Also, I think to get back to the rec, I think I just drove down the new road at the rec. It's awesome.
Great.
So
Love
much
it.
better. But the parking is still awful at the rec. And so everybody knows that we also need a lot more parking at the rec.
Mhm.
So even if we put the PD at fire and we renovate this building, then we also have to build more parking at the rec,
Yeah.
which would be part of the municipal building. So it's like, you know, it's like how many projects do you want versus merging them all into one and doing all the cost at the same time. But
Folks
those are
don't
all
see
moving
that
parts.
when it's at capacity.
Right, I get it.
They don't see it.
Oh,
They
it's
don't
awful
come by on a
sometimes.
Saturday and look at the traffic coming out of that
Oh, it's
place and
nuts.
all the parking that's full. It's not a great setup
Yeah.
for what we have for income or incoming people to utilize that facility. And if we're talking about growing the services of the rec, it's only gonna get worse.
But that's why you need to make sure you're comparing the right things, you know? So the new building is not just the new building versus building in addition to fire. It's the new building, it's building in addition to fire, renovating this building, and renovating rec. So it's 3 projects versus the 1 project. And I
Right.
think we need to be really clear about that,
That's
so
a
people
good-
are comparing apples to apples,
That's a
right?
good
Because it's
point.
not like, oh, just this. It's like, we would need to do all of these things.
Well, and that could be something that we're too, like, you know, we've talked about, okay, if town hall moves and PD takes over the whole building, what's that cost? What does it
Right.
cost?
Ballpark
build
figures.
The new town hall building, what would it cost to ballpark renovate this building usable? So that it's not just like an idea that we haven't considered.
Right.
We did consider it. We can also consider it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that gets off the subject a little bit, putting in the road, doing the walking path, utilizes the parking lot now at the rec for the sports as well,
Mhm.
but the space behind it, we moved the archery, their equipment trailers, their trails, so that whole area out behind now is slated for more parking. You get the access, so
Mhm.
people don't see it, but this, always trying to think forward. And if you do the gymnasium or the athletic center or pavilion, that same space
Right.
is going to be utilized,
Sure. No question.
so it all falls in.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and I've said this before, I wish I could put my vision in my head on paper. You know, because if you look at that area that we have, it's a beautiful area. And it could be an amazing center of town. It really could be. Will it cost money?
Everything costs money.
Everything costs money. But we do have to start somewhere. We started with the road and this, that. You know, but, you know, and then the other part of it too is, you know, all of our employees know. They do. And that, no matter which way you slice it, is a retention factor, is a recruitment factor
Mhm.
for not just town hall, but PD, fire, everybody. But I think that, you know, a lot of that, the other night was really, really revolved around, let's do something else.
Sure.
Some even didn't know what the else was, but not this. That's really, so I think there's a, and you're right, I think some of it is personal, and you're just not gonna change certain minds to move both the town hall. Some people are dead set against it. And
That's their prerogative.
they get
Yeah.
their vote just like everybody else, but they only get one. So, you know, and this whole thing is not a, hey, take it or leave it, and this is what we're doing. It's not that. That's why we do all of this. You were at the meeting, anything else? Anybody else have anything to add for the committee?
I wanted to know.
I was gonna go to public comment in just a second.
Good.
I think it's great that you're doing those public sessions. I think just to give people a chance to say whatever they want to say. This is a fully transparent process, and that's part of it.
you know, I had a couple of officers that attended. They were on duty and they just wanted to see what was going on. And they came out of there kind of depressed. That was terrible. Because it was, you know, I
Well,
was in-
because people who disagree maybe are gonna show up first, that's
right,
okay.
I was in the
That's all
firing
right.
line, and that's okay, and I don't take any of what was said personally. And if I can answer it, I'll answer it. If I can't, I can't. But I said, well, guys, it depends on which optic you look at that meeting. What did we lose and what did we gain? We lost nothing. People came in here with an opinion. They voiced their opinion. I now know their opinion.
Yeah.
So I think I gained a lot from it. And I want to continue to gain from that public input. Because it may, you know, like I mean, I probably would never go for it, but I never even thought about using the upstairs. It you know, probably won't prove to be fruitful, but that's the type of input I want at this place. That, you know, there's only so many of us on a committee, and I think we do a good job of sharing ideas and thoughts, but we can't think of everything, right? And now I know what some of the bigger concerns are.
Yeah.
Right, that's what that meeting is for. Anything from the public?
Uh-oh.
Annoying.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It just died because it is
was
2:21.
interesting. It was interesting. I came because of the article in the newsletter that just that it went from an estimated $4 to $10 million with one sentence saying the fact that it was inflation. So that was, to me, was just mind-boggling. So I wanted to come and kind of find out
Yeah, I can answer that actually.
what.
Okay, sounds good.
So that's kind of the reason behind my campaign. And then to go to the rec center thing, I came to the charrette meeting, first one, whatever. And everybody gave their little talks about what they was gonna do and this is gonna be here and that. Nobody said the price. I mean, they showed all the pictures and renditions of what it was, and it all looked nice. But there was no estimated price tag on this. And except for the guy from the Department of Public Transportation, and I mentioned that, you know, there's Smith Road that we always used to use, my kids were going to use in the rec center. That's how we came into the rec center. That road is there. And that's another access, it's, you know, 200 yards down 125 that people could, you know, easily get in and out. Jumped on me, got $3 million to fix that. That's the only figure that I heard. But other than that, that was like, so it was kind of like, that's out of the question. It's too much. So we're gonna, came up about the roundabout. And that was, that's not a whole lot. So I don't want to go into it. But I think it's just a factor that people don't understand when they start seeing the price tags, or what was it, unknown price tags for some of the things. That's what I think gets people a little concerned. And where the priorities are. And I do feel like you say, there are these things coming in. Municipal, police department, you know, school, everybody's got things coming in. Who's gonna be on the pecking order of getting where the priorities are gonna be?
It's a great question because at the end of the day, it's the voters.
Voters
Yeah.
get to
It's the
decide, right?
voters,
Yeah,
right?
So I think there needs to be, you have to kind of think out of the box and think of, maybe there are alternatives, maybe there are free choices.
Sure.
You mentioned that East Kingston has, you know, it's nice to have the, you know, centralized, you know, organizations in little towns that you pointed out. East Kingston has, you know, their police station. I said, you can throw a stone into Newton from there. It's not in the center of town. Said it's free, they were given the land. Well, you've got land, you said, on Scrabble Road, that's out. No, maybe you need to get back and think about that. That can cut down something. You can say, hey, we took that estimated 10 million, now it's down to 8 million. People can see that. That's the thing that, right now, they're just not tangible things that people can see. That's just my concern.
No, that makes sense. And I think that's why I was trying to speak about the charrette, because I really think people misunderstood the charrette. It wasn't meant to be a financial planning. It was just like a visioning, and it cost the town very little to have this big visioning session. And it was always intended like the town will do with this what you will. And so the rec has been looking it over, and I think the rec board has been trying to prioritize what would make the most benefit for the town that would make revenue, right? Because we want to make revenue
But
where we
also, I
can.
think that it was never meant to be, this is definitively what.
Of
the
course it
plan is.
wasn't.
It's like,
It was an
here's an
idea. It was an idea.
And like, maybe some of these things make sense for Brentwood, and maybe some of them don't.
Exactly.
And we will take the ones that do and maybe tweak them, or
Exactly.
some of them we're just not gonna do.
Yeah, I do think some people got the impression that it was a definitive plan that we were definitely going to do. We just weren't telling you the price tag. And I mean, so many of us in this room have said till we were blue in the face that that's not what it was, and that's still true today. It's just ideas.
Yeah, and I think when you throw out, it's gonna be revenue, and we need to have some figures
Sure.
that we project.
Yep.
Or not, or guarantee, let's say, you know, that, the pavilion's gonna generate, $100,000
Sure.
a year.
Yeah, I think it's important.
I think you have to have those figures, you know, then you also have to put in what are gonna be the costs of upkeep,
Sure.
the personnel, are there gonna be more people? That's gonna start.
That's called a carrying cost, basically, like, here's the cost of the payment, and like, whatever, like, upkeep is gonna be for the year.
Yeah, I mean, every time you build
We
something
should
new.
do a feasibility study.
I know, right?
In terms
Exactly.
of how that,
I'll make sure to tell the rec commission that they should do that next time.
in terms of the jump from the 4 to the 10, that 4 was based on Norwich University students. And I even talked to.
But that was in
Right.
2018.
6
But
years
it-
ago.
It was 6 years ago, but also, and I've talked to Jared here, who used to be a project manager. And I guess on a lot of these projects, they bid it based on cost per square foot. And they used a very low number. Not even, it wasn't even at industry standard in 2018. So it was actually a fairly decent underestimation. That's why that jump is.
And
again,
the current building is bigger.
The other night, I just threw 10 million, I was very specific, said, listen, I don't know if this is what it's gonna cost. That's just based on knowledge of other buildings. That's the whole new thing. And I, said, we're going to have a figure at the close of this feasibility study that Weston and Sampson do, but we just. So when the opportunity arises to give a cost, that's one of the first things I want to do for free, because then we can actually talk it.
But maybe we could say that,
Well,
but Chief, if we could have that information somewhere, that the original number was based on a 2018 estimate of blank per square foot. Current estimate.
Well, I can put that under FAQs and
Yeah.
say there's been
Yeah.
some talk about the write-up that was in the newsletter, just like you just described.
Low, so, put that word in.
Right.
Yeah,
just
oh, yeah,
to-
definitely. It was
Because I
low.
think,
Or realistic.
I
Maybe
think
you should have been
sometimes
5 or 6.
when we can't answer, I think a lot of times I am guilty of this. I'm afraid to answer if I don't feel like I know exactly the correct answer.
Yeah.
And so I think if we have information like that available to us,
Yeah.
either we can pull it up on the website or wherever it is, we can give the answer so that people don't think we're not answering because
We're holding.
We don't know.
something,
Yeah. Either we don't know or we don't want to share.
right,
Yeah.
like, we're not hiding anything. We just want to make sure that we're giving accurate information.
Yep.
And this also is a different building with a different purpose, and it's 6 years later.
So, yes, different square footage, different use profile, and what that was done for. Although the building got designed large enough for both.
Right.
In the end, but not for that particular construction.
Right.
Part of it was unfinished. The building cost for a wood building, graded parking, and so on at the time was around $375 a foot. Something happened in the past 5 years.
I
the
think their
past 5
estimate,
years has been.
I think their
What is it
estimate
now?
actually came in at 175 a square foot, didn't it? Wasn't it that?
I mean, I can, I mean,
375 was
Was it?
what the
Even just
industry was
residential.
then.
What is
for
it
wood
now?
frame. I don't know, it changes, it's just changing.
Well, lumber is
More than that, though.
ridiculously
Yeah.
priced now. It's
And
almost,
it could,
it's almost
Two by
30 to
four.
40% more.
It's
Okay, we're
double the
getting-
price.
Yeah.
yes.
And somebody was, at Lowe's was just describing like, I can't even afford to build houses.
But I think, people, to Dexter's point, people get a thought stuck in their head.
Yeah.
Why is what you told me was going to be 4 million actually 10 million? You have to get into the details. Like that is a massive oversimplification of a complicated process. Something's going on out there.
No, it's a
So to
very
your
good
point,
point.
you need a lot of explanation. It's not that
Our
we just,
911 services are down in the state.
oh.
They were down in Massachusetts.
Does that mean we can go home, PD?
You're not needed.
Jesus, we can't get a hold of us, sorry.
But I think that's a great point to bring up because we don't want people to think, oh, what happened to my $4 million building? How are you springing a $10 million building on me? We have to really give the maximal amount of information so that people know why things have changed and that 6 years have gone by.
Yeah.
And how much was their house worth 6 years ago
There you go.
versus today?
Yeah.
Because mine is a lot.
If I didn't have to build a new house, I could be pretty rich if I
So
sold
things
my
change,
house.
and we just have to be honest about that.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. But
Anything else, Dexter? Thank you very much for that. It means a lot when we hear it, even a second time to hear, so everybody else can.
And if you think of more things, you know how to contact us. Or if you have
Yeah.
friends. that,
he knows
like,
where to find us.
He knows what-
I really genuinely want to be able to answer these questions. Not necessarily so that you can vote a certain way, just so that you have the information.
Yeah, the correct information.
Does anybody else have anything else to add? John, do you have anything? Anybody else on the committee?
What's the current timeframe for the feasibility study being completed and/or delivered to you or this committee? Do we know?
I'd love to say 6 weeks, but
Okay. Seems like we got kind of a little bit behind
Yeah.
the projected timeframe.
which is I really, I want the month of August, at least towards the end of it, to be real information. You know what I mean? So we'll get that information, and continue to educate and promote that information. We will have a fairly robust FAQ question. Would help.
Great.
That's the plan on paper.
Okay.
When is the next?
That's what I'm doing right about now. Let's see. How does we either have July, let's not do the week after the 16th or the 23rd. Those are both Tuesdays. That's for the regular meeting. Anybody have a preference either?
Are you gonna do another?
16th, I'll be away. So.
Yes, I'm gonna do it.
You're gonna do another listing?
Yep,
I prefer 20.
Yeah, 23rd.
23rd. All right, why don't we say the 23rd at 1:30 for our committee
Okay.
meeting? And then I will have my forum meeting on the 15th at 6 p.m. And I'll have that here.
Okay.
And again, I'm not requiring any committee members to attend, but if you want, more than that. Not that I can require them, but I'm just saying,
I
don't
think
feel.
it's helpful sometimes to hear the feedback.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, folks. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
Hopefully not court.
I don't know anybody in Portsmouth.
I think.
Thanks, Dexter, I appreciate
Stop
it.
Yeah.
Just the second
Just a
hand, right?
second.
Isn't that funny?